I'm very surprised how hypocritical our Nigerian senators become. Which senator that after their suspension, because I know they've suspended quite a few, the likes of Alain Dume and the likes, did they do a video to show that they're unsealing their office? They started making overtures. We all have, with sources and empirical evidence, how they were scampering and calling around the day before they finally made the overture, and how they were sending messages and calling that, oh, we are going to unseal our office. And that's why they did that video to quickly show. They did everything. They made calls to try to ensure that Natasha Akpoti does not go ahead with this planned protest. But it didn't work because it's the will of the people. What they now did, so that they will still hold the ace in the conversation, is quickly, it was just yesterday morning, empirical facts only, that they quickly postponed plenary till October 7. Just that morning, that they quickly postponed plenary, started sending messages postponing plenary. Why all of this? I'm not saying anybody involved should not present their evidence. I always say, in a case where Senator Natasha cannot present that evidence on the issue of sexual molestation, I will be the first to berate her. But why gag the woman? They've tried everything possible. They tried the recall. We forget in a hurry that they tried the recall. They've tried several blackmail. So why is that the same National Assembly clerk that wrote that the case is still in court, that she can't be allowed to return, they are the ones that went to unseal with the Sergeant of Arms? Why do we deceive ourselves so much in this country? People should remember, nobody is God. Your life is but for a term. And when you leave there, you will go and face your EFCC cases. We will say the truth in this country.
As for Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, she has said she will not apologize and all of that. Yesterday, she has this band of street urchins who followed her to the National Assembly.
You call them band of street urchins?
They're actually constituents from Kogi Central, and they'd come out to march in solidarity. In solidarity of their representative.
Of
their senator.
It's not just people from Kogi Central. Even their supporters. But I've said my word. And I have enough courage and competence to stand by my
All right, okay. But let me go straight in. Reactions to Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's dramatic return to the National Assembly on Tuesday. After a grueling 6-month suspension, the Kogi Central lawmaker arrived at the National Assembly complex, accompanied by a crowd of supporters just hours after her office in the Senate wing was unsealed. The senator's return wasn't without controversy. Speaking to journalists before entering her office, Akpoti-Uduaghan revealed she had learned of her reinstatement through news reports and social media videos rather than official communication from the National Assembly management.
I read on the news, online news, that our office has been opened. I even saw a video where the clerk was opening the door to the office himself. So as at this moment, I have not been officially communicated to, because I expect an institution like the National Assembly should have some administrative procedures and processes whereby communications will be written. The last written communication we got from the clerk was that which says that we are not allowed to resume because the case is at the appeal court. He also mentioned that it was within the purview of the Senate to lift this illegal suspension that had even already expired.
This was quite strange, Rufai. We were just talking about that. They didn't even tell her that they didn't open. Well, you know, hundreds of supporters of Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan gathered at the National Assembly to welcome the returning lawmaker, but were barred from entering Parliament and dispersed with tear gas by security operatives. The supporters, who included activist and co-founder of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, Aisha Yusufu, thronged the National Assembly complex waving Nigerian flags, chanting, dancing and singing praises for the return of the Kogi Central lawmaker.
Nigeria! Peter for Natasha! Natasha for Nigeria! The princess of the Senate! Right. You are taking your place today! You are a senator! Nobody can remove you! Your people are with you! God is with you! This is the wife of Alan.
There's no problem, I'm asking God for what?
Tear gas at the National Assembly complex. They were not even, acting up. They were not. They were just there to welcome their lawmakers. Yes. Their constituents. What do you call them?
They're representatives.
No, that's all right. They call them street urchins.
Well, all right. Well, immediately after resuming her office, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan launched a blistering attack on the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, accusing him of returning to the National Assembly like a dictatorship and threatening her as his personal servant. The Kogi Central lawmaker made the explosive remarks while addressing journalists in her office. She described her 6-month ordeal as a test of resilience against institutional injustice.
It just shows that sometimes it's good to put the institutions to test. We can't cow down in the face of injustice. No one is more Nigerian than us. Senator Akpabio is not more of a senator than I am. He's not a governor of this place. And he treated me as if I was his servant or I was a domestic staff in his house. It's very unfortunate that at this time, after so many years of democracy, we would have a National Assembly be run by such dictatorship. It's totally unacceptable. As for me, I'm glad to be here. And even though we have been illegally suspended, no day have I hesitated in effectively carrying out my duties as a senator of Kogi Central to the very best of my capacity.
And we have seen that, Ayo. She has been doing her job. Well, the fiery comeback has already set social media ablaze, with many anticipating fresh political battles within the Senate as Natasha's return promises to reignite tensions over Akpabio's leadership style. I'll take a tweet. This person wrote on X. Another episode of the Senate reality show featuring Natasha versus Akpabio. Can we get back to real issues like minimum wage, ASO strikes, and insecurity? Natasha says she was treated like a servant, but millions of Nigerians are treated worse daily by a system she's part of. Maybe start fighting for them, not just for respect in the Senate. The Senate is turning into a personal battlefield. Nigerians are tired of watching elites fight for relevance while the country burns. Another ex-user wrote, I express my admiration and commendation for your courage in standing up for your beliefs. It is indeed unfortunate and unjust that we are faced with governance by authoritarian figures, which undermines the strength of our institutions, thus weak institution. I mean, I think I like that tweet, Ayo. I'll come over to you. I believe that this story, has come again in the, front burner. And like, the other Twitter user alluded to, there's going to be another version of a Natasha versus Akpabio saga, because obviously she did accuse him of dictatorship and treating her like a servant. But I don't know what your thoughts are with, the fact that they tear-gassed her people, her constituents that were there, and the fact that, they unsealed her office without her knowledge.
So we found out about the unsealing of her office while we were on air. So we, in the newsroom, virtual newsroom, we saw pictures that the sergeant at arms and the clerk of the Senate had gone to make a show of unsealing her office. And from her interview, we then discovered that she wasn't even informed. I know it put us in that situation as to, okay, this unsealing, does it mean that the Senate is now willing to receive her? Does it mean they're setting aside the court case which they had cited as the reason why they could not admit her following the end of her 6-month suspension? A number of questions around this. And if we're going to build strong institutions, which we continuously advocate here on this table, we have to ensure that we get to the bottom of this. It's not enough for us to just wake up one morning and all is forgiving, kumbaya, let's move on. And well, that's important because like someone, the earlier ex-user had said that now it's just joke, we're making a joke of the Senate whereby serious issues ought to be debated on the floor of the Senate. However, I dare say that this is a serious issue because if you don't get it right, we'll continue to see matters like this emerge and we'll continue to have disgraceful actions on different parts and different ways from the Senate. So I think it's important to get to the bottom of this. However, I do believe that, as Justice Binta Nyako had said, the people of Kogi Central deserve representation. And it is a shame that in the last 6 months, their voices were literally silenced because there was no voice for them in the Senate. And that's another thing that we need to look into and really open and see what could have gone wrong and how we can correct it for next time. We should shouldn't have people in Nigeria whose voices are silenced. I'm talking about silencing voices. A group of people exercising their right to protest, peaceful protest, or they're not even protesting. They're just showing solidarity, support to Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, and we're tear-gassed. For what reason? We are too used to using, these forceful actions to disperse citizens of Nigeria, citizens who, despite all challenges, continue to exercise their right and show support because they wanted their voices heard, and then they were tear-gassed. For what reason? Did they behave in a disruptive manner? Were they disrupting any legislative proceedings, which, by the way, they are not there on recess? So I want to understand why tear gas was used on the people. Let's not get used to nonsense. Let's not get used to bad behavior. I think it's very important to state that. But now that Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan is there, I'm glad she said she continued to work for her constituents. Let us get work done. Yes. Let them come back from their long recess and actually begin to represent the interests of those who have put their trust in them by electing them to represent them in the Senate. That's what we want to see. But lastly, I want to say this. Beyond Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, the reason why this was very important was we're not just fighting for the person. As we often say, we are fighting for the institution or fighting for the position. It can be Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan today. It can be someone else tomorrow. And if we don't speak up, we will continue to see this kind of undemocratic actions, almost dictatorial in its nature, happen in the Senate. And that's not what we want. We are defending Nigeria's institution, not just an individual.
What happened yesterday is a triumph for the will of the people. We saw the hypocrisy of the Senate. And I'm very surprised how hypocritical our Nigerian Senate has become. Which senator that after their suspension, because I know they've suspended quite a few, the likes of Dume and the likes, did they do a video to show that they are unsealing their office? So it's part of the hypocrisy. But I thought the Senate clerk wrote a letter the other day that the case is in court and some people were supporting the Senate clerk, that she should not return. So why did they go to unseal the office? It was simply because they got wind of the fact that Natasha was coming, that Natasha Akpoti was coming with a full force of people power and her constituents to march there. So they started making overtures. We all have, with sources and empirical evidence, how they were scampering and calling around the day before they finally made the overture, and how they were sending messages and calling that, oh, we are going to unseal our office. And that's why they did that video to quickly show. They did everything. They made calls to try to ensure that Senator Natasha Akpoti does not go ahead with this planned protest. But it didn't work because it's the will of the people. The same National Assembly that their clerk wrote a day before that she can't come. So what changed? And further, what they now did so that they will still hold the ace in the conversation is quickly, it was just yesterday morning, empirical facts only, that they quickly postponed plenary till October 7. Just that morning, and they quickly postponed plenary. I started sending messages postponing plenary. Why all of this? I'm not saying anybody involved should not present their evidence. I always say, in a case where Senator Natasha cannot present that evidence on the issue of sexual molestation, I will be the first to berate her. But why gag the woman? They've tried everything possible. They tried the recall. We forget in a hurry that they tried the recall. They've tried several blackmail. After the expiration of the term, the court again, the National Assembly clerk wrote that she will not come. So why is that the same National Assembly clerk that wrote that the case is still in court, that she can't be allowed to return? They are the ones that went to unseal with the Sergeant of Arms. The National Assembly clerk people not calling representative of Natasha that they've unsealed the place. So why do we deceive ourselves so much in this country? And I keep repeating, people should remember, nobody is God. Your life is but for a term. And when you leave there, you're going to face your EFCC cases. We will say the truth in this country, because the truth will make us free.
I think the persons who have suffered most in this case are the people of Kogi Central who have been denied representation by their senator for 6 months. And that is why it is important that we move beyond all of this drama very quickly. The melodrama is just childish, in fact, in my view. You know, they don't need it. One man called, I think his name is Alabi Adediji. I'm the deputy director, sergeant at arms, and then they provided video. Look, we have been told previously that the Senate was in recess. They were to come back September 23. And, okay, they extended it now to October 7, maybe because some are still stuck somewhere, or some of them are hanging around the premises of the United Nations General Assembly, where they have nothing concrete to contribute. But it's okay. That's Nigerian behavior. when they come back, let them just focus on the rules that Justice Binta Nyako had advised them to take a look at and to ensure order. And then every senator must also try to find accommodation and behave within the scope of the rules. As for Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, I don't think she needs any further drama. She has said she will not apologize and all of that. Yesterday, she has this band of street urchins who followed her to the National Assembly. That was not necessary. She could just have resumed, and then we'll move on to serve her people. She says she has issues about Ajaokuta, about petrochemicals, quality things that she wants to contribute on. Can she just focus on those contributions? The Senate and both Senator Natasha, in handling this matter, have both not behaved in a distinguished manner. And that should be embarrassing to all of us.
All right. Dr. Abati has constituents might take offense and refer to them
You
as
call them
urchins.
band of street urchins.
They are actually constituents from Kogi Central, and they'd come out to march in solidarity, in solidarity of their representative.
Obi, are well ready.
Of their senator
It's not just people
representative.
from Kogi Central. Even their supporters. But I've said my own.
They will
And I have
reply
enough
you.
courage and competence to stand by my
Don't
cause.
feel bad when they
All right,
reply
okay,
you.
yeah. With what has happened with Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, that woman fought. She never kept quiet, and she kept going on and on until this matter was resolved. I pay kudos to everyone who stood by her, because on one hand, we're talking about the fact that the governor of Rivers State ought to have, spoken up, stood up, and ensured that he, defended democracy in his state. And so what she has done is in defense of democracy. We're talking about the special reserve bill for women, more women representation in the National Assembly. I think it's beyond having representation in the National Assembly for women. I think it's also providing an enabling environment for them to thrive. Because the silence of the other women legislators was very loud. A number of them hardly said anything, aside from the beginning when they came out to grant interviews here and there. But when it came to supporting one of their own, they were actually quite silent. So I give kudos to all the other women groups who stood up and ensured that the matter was never put to the back burner until the Senate was able to respond to her. This is what active pressure, good pressure can do. And that is why the people cannot afford to keep quiet. And so that's why I applaud some of those who rose up with her yesterday to follow her to the Senate to see what would happen. And at the end of the day, even though they were tear gassed, let's not talk about that, by the way, because when we will stop tear gassing our citizens for their right to protest, when we will stop tear gassing them? But anyways, that's out of the way. They tear gassed them, but she was able to resume office, and now hopefully she can do what she was elected to do by her people. The people of Kogi Central deserve representation, and I'm glad that finally this is now happening. Now, she spoke about the high-handedness and the dictatorship-like leadership of the Senate president. That has to come into question. We're talking about a strong democracy yesterday, and that if we must have a thriving democracy, we need strong institutions like the legislature, like the judiciary. We need to speak up about things like that. I also think there are pertinent issues that must not be swept under the carpet in this particular matter. It shouldn't just be kumbaya, let us now work. What are the issues that brought us to this level? If we don't deal with them, if we don't investigate this claim around sexual harassment in the Senate, then we will have a repeat of that happening, and we're going to come back again to this particular issue and continue to deal with it. We need to ensure that our institutions are upheld and we protect it. It is not just for us now, it is for posterity's sake. And that's why I think what she did was very important. And this one, I give her kudos for standing up. What now remains would be whether she's able to defend her claim, because that's very important. I think that ought to see the light of day.